it's this weird skill, ability, vision, execution versus like how does the tool help you kind of enhance all of that rather than the tool. The tool's never going to enhance your vision or whatever kind of story you're trying to tell. It's always going to be the other way around. The tool is going to kind of be an accessory to that. At least that's what it's been for me. Yeah, I think a lot of people think that they need to get a full frame camera because it's going to make them a better photographer. That's not the case.
Hey, welcome to episode 369 of the Beginner Photography Podcast, brought to you by CloudSpot, the easiest way to deliver and even sell your photos online. I'm your host, Raymond Hatfield, and each week I interview one of the world's most interesting photographers to learn what it really takes to capture beautiful images and compelling stories so that you can start to do the same. Today, we have an episode from the BPP Vault. So after years of interviewing world-class photographers, I have built a rich library of photo tips and tricks that guests share to help you become better at capturing amazing images. So with new listeners finding the show every day, and these rewind interviews allow new listeners to discover the gold nuggets from the past and allow longtime listeners to revisit and hear an interview with fresh ears and more hands-on experience to draw from. So in today's interview, we are chatting with commercial product photographer Martin Moore. Now, shout out to the one and only Jim Sinicki for connecting me here with Martin. You know, Martin, I think, has done something that so many of you want to do. Leave your day job and follow your passion in photography. Like, really be able to use your camera as a creative outlet and earn a living from it. So today we talk about why it is so hard to do that. We're going to talk about how Martin did it himself, and he's going to share some tips on how you can do it too. So this is a really inspiring interview that I know you are going to love. With that, let's go ahead and get on into this podcast episode with Martin Moore. Today's guest is Martin Moore, a commercial product photographer from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who after 20 years as a mechanic left his job to become a full-time photographer. Today, we're going to chat about leaving your job and following your passion. Martin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I really, really appreciate it. It's always fun doing these things and chopping it up, talking about photography and just my journey and the hustle and the grind.
Yeah, photography is definitely a fun thing to talk about.
It is.
It's interesting. When we first started the podcast, I never thought that it would become successful by any stretch of the imagination because photography is such a visual form.
Yeah.
And yet, the more that I do this, the more that I find out that photography really isn't about a photograph. It's about a feeling. It's about those emotions, and those things you can feel without seeing something. But there's something about that visual element that really,
absolutely,
kicks it up a notch, I suppose. But before we get into too much photography stuff, as I mentioned there, you kind of had an unconventional start in photography. So can you share with me and the listeners how you got started in all of this?
Yeah, that's an understatement. So I started working on cars in 1997. When I was in high school, and then I managed a Jiffy Lube, which is like an oil change place, and then I became a master Honda technician in, I think, 99, and that's what I did for a living, for a career, all the way up until 2017. I dropped out of college after my first semester. I was going for internet media arts. I don't even know what that was, but all I've ever known was cars. And then in 2017, I got my job here at Headphones. You probably can't tell that. Shooting all of our commercials, our photography, doing all of our emails and website stuff and blog and all of our content. But the kind of the segue in between all of that was a 10-year period of just starting shooting pictures the same way everyone else does, just going out, taking pictures of architecture and bridges with your friends and getting into portrait photography. Then I started getting into shooting weddings. Then that kind of led to commercial photography, doing stuff for hotels and product photography. And then around 2000, I think it was 2015, I didn't have a single photo shoot for the whole year. And I was super bummed. And I was like, well, I'm going to start my YouTube channel and start vlogging. And then that was really the catalyst for Martin Moore as a brand and my photography and my filmmaking stuff that kind of really pushed me to where I am today. And I started getting noticed and started getting a lot of opportunities. So that's kind of the 2-minute condensed elevator pitch or whatever or story.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a lot that kind of went into getting from just taking pictures of bridges and like random models to shooting commercial photography and products for box art and billboards and stuff like that. So we can dive deeper into that if you want.
Yeah, let us do that, because I'm always fascinated behind. I think that you did a great job. Most people come on and they say, "Oh, I picked up a camera, I got good at it. 10 years later, I'm a professional." And you're like, "Whoa, hold on,
back it up a little bit, really quick." I like to know some of the nuances of how you got it, because photography is. I mean, it always. Even in its heyday back in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where every single person you knew was like a wedding photographer or a portrait photographer, even back then, doing it for a living was still it was a tough gig, and it wasn't one that was very like lucrative and paid very well. And it's even harder today with the whole Instagram culture. And I mean, it really is true. You can take one of these and I can shoot bang. I mean, I shoot all of our commercials for cost on my iPhone. And so the competition is vastly increased nowadays. And so it's even harder. So the fact that I'm able to do this for a living and make a really good living and do what I love is you don't kind of see that very often. And then to kind of get this career the way that I got it is even more. And makes people like, how the heck did you do this? And so,
yeah. So then tell me about, because obviously there was that time you're working at Honda for the majority of your career, and then at some point you got yourself a camera.
Yeah.
Right.
So I got this
What was it about the camera or the photography that got you interested in the first place?
So I actually took photography in high school, and maybe my freshman year. I might be making that up. Freshman, sophomore year, and this was back in the day, okay, boomer, when like cameras were still film. So I learned how to shoot photography, film cameras, develop my own film. And then I didn't really do anything with it. I was shooting on, I think my dad had a bunch of old Minolta cameras, and I didn't really do anything with it. I was into music at the time, and like I was really into just bands, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. That was my creative output. And I didn't do anything with photography till about 2008. I met my wife, and we went and took our first trip together to Las Vegas, and I got this little crappy Kodak point and shoot camera. It was like 4.5 megapixel. And as soon as we were up in the air, I started taking pictures and videos. And when we got back from our trip, like, I don't know, I really enjoyed the photos of the mountains I took and just kind of the random people in the street. And I made a video too, like a little vacation video with all the photos and videos I took. And that was really the catalyst for me getting interested in photography. A year later, I shot my first wedding in Mexico. And then I got another wedding and another wedding. And I met people on Instagram and started like hanging out and going on like photo meetups and shoots and stuff like that. And kind of just like how every photographer gets their start, it just kind of snowballed, and I just made the time for it. I wanted to make the time for it. And it really started completing me. And the more and more I got interested and got good at photography, the less and less I really cared about my music. And that really kind of just overtook my whole need to be like a creative until I started doing commercial photography and product photography. I've done some stuff for ASICs, Honda, this company Sweet Trio that makes like really delicious chocolates, a lot of like towers here in Milwaukee, that like really big towers, like architectural photography. But it happened really quickly, as much as it happened really slowly, if that makes any kind of sense. But the only reason why I was ever able to kind of build something for myself was because like I'm not the best photographer in the world. I don't make the best commercials in the world. I don't make the best YouTube videos in the world. But the one thing that I was able to do is kind of brand myself and get people to not want to hire any photographer. I wanted to get them to hire Martin Moore first and foremost. And so my YouTube channel was kind of a blessing in disguise. I started that because I didn't have any photography jobs that year, and it was kind of my creative output. And it's funny how that's kind of where everything that I've built now kind of stems from. In Martin Moore, in air quotes, as a brand, is really what set me apart from every other photographer trying to do the exact same thing. So personal branding was really the thing that got me to where I am today, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it does. It does. And I'm really excited to kind of dive deeper into that, because I don't think that that's something that we've really explored much on the podcast. But you said something interesting there that I want to explore a bit more, which was that you went to Vegas, you had yourself that Canon point and shoot camera. Yes. A year later, Kodak. Shot your first wedding in Mexico. Yep. Right. First of all, was it still with that Kodak point and shoot camera? And second of all, no, okay, let's start with that first before I move on to that next question.
Yeah, it was with a better Kodak. It was like one of those advanced. It wasn't like digital SLR, but it wasn't a point and shoot. It was one of those weird like hybrids where like you could adjust aperture and exposure and all that stuff in ISO, but it still had like the attached lens. It was like a smart dumb camera.
Gotcha. Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? I don't even know if they make them anymore.
No, they
do.
It
was with that.
I know. I mean, I don't know if Kodak does, but my Canon, I think it was the G7. I mean, that's essentially like the same type of thing where it's that attached lens, but there's more of those
exactly
exposure controls that you have there. So was that wedding for like family and friends? Is that how you?
So that was for a friend.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I was in the wedding. But so I was still snapping pictures and stuff. And when I got back, he posted them online, tagged me in like Facebook. And this was back in 2009, I think. And I think it was a matter of weeks. There was someone else that was like, hey, my friend's getting married. Like, do you do weddings? I was like, yeah. So I did it for like, I don't know, it was like $600. And it was like the most stressful thing of like my entire life. So it's one thing to like shoot pictures like for your friends and people that you know. And it's another one to like take on a job and take someone else's money that you don't know, you know, and pray that you don't mess it up. Yeah. And so I remember how stressful that like first paid wedding for someone that I didn't know was. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if this is something that I want to do, but the pictures were amazing. They loved them. They were so happy. And it was like instantly I got another job and I didn't even have time to think about how bad the photos actually were. Cause looking back, they're not good photos. I mean, this was back when like HDR was in its prime. So like, sure. Oh yeah. So like the trees and the dresses and the hair were all HDR'd out and it was, they weren't good, but I just kept learning. I kept doing, I kept slowly branding myself and people for whatever reason just kept hiring me.
So let's talk more about the learning aspect. Because as far as we've heard from you so far, you had the camera, you took photos that you liked, and then you had a wedding. That first wedding that you had, did you have already that understanding of how to get an exposure and how to, get something or how to change something to achieve what it was that you wanted? Or was it mainly on auto and then you grew after that?
YouTube videos.
YouTube videos, yes.
What does ISO do? What happens if I overexpose something? And it was just, why is this person's forehead washed out? And it was basically just Google and YouTube. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't read any books. I didn't even really experiment with my camera. I would just take a picture. If there was something that I felt was off, I would just go on YouTube, figure out what it was, and then learn how to adjust it and learn the differences and the pros and cons of white balance and exposure and ISO and shutter speed, and just kind of taught myself how those things all work together to get whatever the desired image I wanted was. I didn't even know what like bokeh was. I didn't know that when you like have a wide open aperture, like that, like your focus plane gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so like I couldn't figure out why I would take a picture of someone's like to the side and their ear was in focus and their eye wasn't. So it was all YouTube trying to figure that stuff out.
So then how long would you say it took from the time where you decided that you were going to get serious about photography till the first time that you really felt confident with your camera? How long do you think that progression took?
Never.
Okay. But there's some sort of competency right now that you feel comfortable with. So.
You always think, at least for me, maybe I'm projecting, but with everything that I've done, whether it was a YouTube video or it was a podcast that I've done or a radio show or a picture I've taken, you always hit that point where you're like, this is the best photo I've ever taken. That was the best podcast I ever did. And then a year later, you reflect and you look at those pictures or that video you made or that podcast you were on, and you're like, boy, that was trash. So I've kind of just learned that I'm never reached the apotheosis of my understanding for all this stuff. Even when I started for costs, I remember I first started and I couldn't figure out why, like, I couldn't get like the Headphone logo like perfectly in focus, and like just even trying to find like the perfect aperture where I'd have a nice blurry background, but the eye was in focus, and then the logo on the headphone also had to be in focus. It's not something you think about when you do portrait photography. All you really care about is that the eyes and the eyelashes are in focus, the nose, the mouth, and everything can kind of fade out. When you start putting products in there, you have to make sure the sneakers are also in focus, as long as, and so even now navigating that kind of stuff and figuring out like what are the best settings, I'm still fumbling through things. It's just always a learning process. So to answer the question, when did I start feeling confident? Never really, to be honest. Like I just always feel like I'm learning, and I always look back a year from now and I'm just like, Yeah, my stuff's way better now. And so it's just,
just still moving up all the time.
Yeah, it's just, I'm on going up steps. I just never felt like I've been on an escalator, if that makes any kind of sense.
No, it does. It does. And I think it's interesting because looking back, it's easy to feel like there's some sort of natural progression sometimes, but looking forward, there never is. Like there's never, so, like sometimes it may seem easy, right? Yeah. Like, oh, I just got to learn this thing, and that thing, and then I'm good.
Yeah.
But going forward,
Then you get to that one shoot and you're like, well, I don't know what to do for this.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's so many shoots I'm on where I'm just like, I don't know. They're just all so different, which is what I love about the challenge of doing photography or even shooting videos for that matter, is just the challenge that is every situation is always so different. So it's like everything you learn on one shoot, half the time it's not even applicable to the next shoot. And so I think that's what I really enjoy about photography.
Yeah.
Especially commercial photography, because at least with weddings or portraits, there's room for slightly noisy photos or, I don't know, a myriad of imperfections in an image. With commercial photography, everything that I shoot with this camera for a box or a billboard, I mean, it's got to be noise-free, tack sharp. I mean, we use Pantones for everything. So all that you don't use filters when you do commercial photography. What color the headphone is in real life that we're selling you has got to be the exact same color in the picture, or that's false advertising. And so I really enjoy those kind of nuances when it comes to commercial photography. And so that's always just a hard thing to kind of just learn and stay up on top of. So I never feel like I'm.
When you had first started, obviously filters are, I don't want to say universal, but I think people understand how to use filters. It's very common.
Don't use them, kids. Don't use them, kids.
It's very common for people to put
presets.
Filters on their photos, even like, wedding photos that I may deliver, because people are just kind of so ingrained into, if I'm going to upload a photo, put a filter on it. So was that something that you were doing early on, and was that a hard lesson?
No? I'm not even joking. I've never used a preset or a filter ever.
Tell me then about how, I'm really interested in that, mainly because a lot of people take photos. If they don't like it, they try to fix it in editing.
Yeah.
If you're not, using filters or a one-click solution, was it trying to get it right in camera? Was that always your intention?
Right now, I try to get it right in camera, but I always like to just take every single image as its own piece of art in its own story and kind of give it its own individual attention rather just some photo and some giant batch edit. I don't even batch edit like photos, even that are from the exact same. Like I just did a shoot with Grace Weber. She's like the girl who she wrote like the first track on Chance the Rapper's Grammy album. Mm-hmm. I just did a shoot with her last week. Literally, I didn't change a single setting. I literally could have just linked all the files and batch edited all of them. And I still just one by one individually edited the eyes and brought out definition in her outfit and did things to the background. And I just prefer to focus on an individual image rather than just blanketly kind of edit everything. And maybe that's why I've gotten where I am today. Maybe not, but that's just always been my approach, I guess. If that makes any sense.
Again, I'm really interested in that. The editing side of things tends to, at least for me, take up a good portion of my time. So I'm always looking for ways to speed up that workflow.
The editing is what is going to separate your image from everyone else's image. It's no different than when you're cutting film. If I just hit record on my phone and take a video of you going to the grocery store, you give that one single video clip to 10 different film editors, and how they cut that video up and splice it together for a final montage, those edits are what separates every single one of their final products. And it's the same thing with a photo. It's going to look the same no matter what person like hits the button on it, but how you make the colors pop, and what you do with the eyes, how you smoothen the skin, what you do with the background, how you crop it, all of that stuff, that's what makes the image uniquely yours. And that's the one thing that no one else can copy. A preset or a filter, all that is just the same settings, that someone else put on their photo. And so what's uniquely about it that's yours? So I guess that's how I've always kind of looked at it.
Yeah.
It's my signature.
Right. So if the edit is the signature, obviously getting to some level within camera is obviously very important. So
100%.
When you were starting out, when you were getting started, I know that, you said that you did a lot of searching on YouTube for whenever you had any sort of problem, but was there anything on the technical side of photography that maybe took longer to fully understand or to grasp or to truly master? Noise.
Noise has been the biggest thorn in my ass
forever
since day one. Combating noisy photos has been harder than like chasing light, which are like, for me, that was always such a really hard thing to do, like just chasing the perfect light. Because I don't use, like when I do our shoots for cost, I don't use bounce boards or reflectors or any of that stuff. I just chase the light and I use the sun or reflections off of buildings or, I don't know, a neon sign. And that's what I use to light my subjects or light the chrome on a pair of headphones. And that's a really difficult thing to kind of comprehend and be able to navigate in real time. But even as hard and as difficult as like that is, combating noise has just been, I just still feel like I still mess around with it. I still get frustrated by it.
Still after all these years. So why do you think you had such a problem in the beginning? And why do you think still today, like what is it today that is your biggest struggle with it?
Back in the day, it was my camera. I mean, I think my first digital SLR was a Nikon D3000, which for me was like a game changer. But I mean, those things you could bump the ISO up to, in the best situations, 800, and you'd already start to see noise. I shoot on a Nikon D750, and even at like ISO 2000, I'm starting to see like noise that like I'm not okay with. And ISO 2000 really don't give you a whole lot of wiggle room when you're even in a remotely lit situation. You know, like even in a room like this, which looks like it's well lit, if you want to bump down to f2.8, f2.4, something like that, like you're going to have to really start jacking up the ISO. And I don't know, it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I hate noise.
That's interesting. Still to this day, you are. This is still something that you worry about when it comes to cameras. Is it? How much does that affect getting new cameras for you? Would you say that's the most important aspect?
That's the most important thing for me. That's why I really have finally started getting interested in mirrorless cameras, because if I can bump the shutter speed down just a little bit more, like in really crazy situations, to like, I don't know, a 50th of a second or 40th of a second, like handheld, and just get that and be able to lower my ISO just a stop or two. Like for me, that would be huge, especially if I'm shooting like at nighttime downtown or anywhere where it's really dimly lit. Cause I hate flashes. I don't like reflectors because I feel like you can tell when someone uses a reflector because it's so perfectly lit. And so I just really like to do everything in camera. And so, yeah, a mirrorless camera would really, I think, kind of help with that, but I'm not the biggest fan of mirrorless.
So then what is holding you back?
For mirrorless?
Mm-hmm.
Battery. I rip through battery, so I don't like, I can, fair. With this thing, I never have to. And then just the lack of buttons. I mean,
buttons.
I adjust Kelvin. There's so much stuff that I need to be able to adjust on the fly. And mirrorless cameras are compact and they just don't have as many dedicated buttons. And it might sound stupid, but
no. I'm sorry for laughing at that. I wasn't expecting that answer. It was great. It was fantastic.
I need those, and in a touch screen is not good enough for me. So probably those two things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think now, obviously a lot of new photographers getting into photography, maybe they still have, they might still have that D3000, just getting started. Yeah. Would you say that they're still able to take, like if they want to get into commercial photography, are they able to do so and get started with that D3000? Or do you think that they have to go full frame or don't even bother?
No, it's a tough question, because had you asked me that 5-6 years ago, I would have said, yeah, that camera made me a lot of money. Totally. But cameras like the Nikon D750 or the Canon, what's that one? Is the 80D? Is that full frame?
No, that'd be a crop sensor. So full frame would be the 5D series.
Yes, 5D. So many of those full frame cameras are so accessible now to people that the competition is so much higher. You're seeing kids in high school with Sony mirrorlesses and full frame cameras. And so the stakes are so much higher now, and there's so many more just consumers using equipment that is producing really, really clean images that I think it would be really difficult now to try and do like a commercial shoot and try and compete image quality wise. I know that sounds stupid, but I mean, it's the same thing with this. Uh-huh. I shoot all of our commercials on my iPhone, and if I didn't tell you, you'd have no clue. Mm-hmm. And so it makes anybody who's shooting with something like this, it raises the stakes for them. And so if to me equipment matters and it doesn't matter at the same time, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yes. Yeah, it does. Yes. In fact, that's exactly what I was going to bring up, is I was going to play devil's advocate here and talk about that article that you had wrote about that was advocating for more use of for iPhone photos. Obviously, the iPhone has a much smaller sensor than full frame. So do you just see the two cameras as two totally separate tools with two totally separate
that's all they are, is they're tools, and no one is better than the other. And it really comes down to the individual's vision of whatever story that they're trying to tell. Like I could probably shoot a wedding on this thing, pictures better than a lot of people probably could with their digital SLR. But if you're going to try and blow up the images on an iPhone, they're just not, so it's this weird skill, ability, vision, execution versus like, how does the tool help you kind of enhance all of that, rather than the tool's never going to enhance your vision or whatever kind of story you're trying to tell. It's always going to be the other way around. The tool is going to kind of be an accessory to that. At least that's what it's been for me.
It's a fine line.
I think a lot of people think that they need to get a full frame camera because it's going to make them a better photographer. That's not the case. If you can't take awesome photos with this, getting a better camera is not going to do anything for you. But if you already take awesome photos and videos with this, then yes, a better piece of equipment, a better tool is going to just make whatever you're doing even much better.
So is that the advice you would give if somebody came up to you at a party and said, hey, I like photography. What camera should I get? You'd say, you know what, use the iPhone for now.
Yeah, use it. Master your iPhone. Master your Nikon D3400. Master your 80D. Master your point and shoot camera, your RX100. Master that thing first before you waste a bunch of money on a D850 or a Sony mirrorless or a Hasselblad or whatever the hell you feel like getting. Because those are not going... In some cases, all that's going to do is just make you a worse photographer, in my opinion.
No, I love it. I love it. It's really a refreshing take. I think as somebody who, interestingly enough, actually just yesterday, I recorded an interview with somebody who is literally a master photographer, has a master's degree in photography. And we had a long discussion about kind of that formal education route, as well as the importance of gear. And I think that your take is very refreshing. And it's completely valid because you lived it. You're here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what I mean? If I didn't know what I was talking about, I wouldn't. This isn't what I would be doing for a living. And a worldwide multi-million-dollar company wouldn't be paying me, not to mention all the other companies that pay me to do stuff. But it really comes down to your vision and then your execution of it. I mean, those are the two most important things. And, gear, even sometimes gear doesn't matter. And I'm going to be talking about video, but you can apply this to photography. But look at like all of the videos that Nike makes, like especially on their YouTube channel. They all look like they're all grainy. They look like they were shot with an iPhone, but they tell very compelling stories. And you forget that the thing isn't shot on some giant camera rig with a gimbal with a giant crew of people. It was just some filmmaker that used some small little camera, told a really compelling story. And so as long as you're telling a compelling story in your image or your video or whatever it is that you're creating, that's the most important part. And the tool is just an accessory to that. The tool is never going to make or break your creative, I think, vision.
Yeah, very cool.
In my opinion.
Very cool.
Because people have been making awesome stuff for centuries. It's not like all of a sudden in the last 10 years, because we have mirrorless cameras and all this stuff, all of a sudden now all the dope creative stuff is being made. We haven't had iPhones and all these full frame mirrorless cameras up until recently. So how was everyone else making all these iconic award winning photos and videos and stuff with, technology that's not as good as what we have today? It's all vision and execution. So
it's just that tool. It's just that tool. Yeah.
It's just how you use the tools. And sometimes you have to compensate. If you have a crappier camera, you have to compensate and do things with lighting. Maybe you have to get a couple extra lights, or you have to use a gimbal for this thing. Sony mirrorless camera, you can just handhold it, but I have to compensate for what that can do by putting this on a gimbal. Maybe you have a Nikon D3400 that gets really grainy at ISO 800, and this doesn't till 2000. All right, so maybe you need to get a studio light. Maybe you do need to use a flash. Maybe you do need to use a reflector. Maybe you can only shoot during the daylight. So you have to compensate for your shortcomings of your equipment, but that in no way should ever hinder you from being able to execute whatever creative vision that you have. And so that new iPhone commercial that you've seen with the snowball fights that was all shot on an iPhone,
right?
It was shot by that director, shot on an iPhone. So yeah, he had to use a bunch of crazy gimbals and stuff like that. But did any of that really cost any more than what they would have shot it with on a, I don't know, whatever, like a red camera? So yeah, your vision and execution is the most important thing above anything else, in my opinion.
That's going to be probably the memorable.
And a lot of people don't like that. Especially pro photographers, that there's a lot of people that are just hell bent that gear. It's all about the gear.
That's sad. I know. I've taken a lot of great photos. A lot of my favorite photos are taken with garbage cameras. And I think that kind of releases some of the pressure on you, if that makes sense. Like you don't, like when I have my, I shoot Fuji, so I shoot mirrorless. So
nice.
If I have that camera in my hand, there's kind of this feeling inside of me that I have to perform. I have to get a sound, great image. And then I'm always looking at things a little bit differently. But if I just have my phone in my hand, it's a little bit more relaxed. And sometimes I get a photo that, I don't know, means a little bit more to me. Maybe it's not as good technically, but vision and execution, I think, like you said, is the key there. And
that's why I like to shoot videos with this thing, because this on a tiny little gimbal allows me to be way more maneuverable, way more creative, and just not think about this giant camera that's on a 5-axis gimbal that I'm holding with two, like that's intrusive. All I'm thinking about is this heavy camera in my hand, whereas this, I can just get anywhere I want. It almost allows me to be more creative. Like the dumber tech almost lets me be more creative, and the end product is almost better because I'm using, a lesser quality.
It's a crazy time to be alive, isn't it?
Great time to be alive.
Yeah. I want to talk right now a little bit more about the job that you have.
Yes.
What's the technical title of your position?
Content developer was as vague as they could make it.
And what does that mean as a photographer?
Basically anything that you hear, see, smell, or touch that involves content for Koss headphones, I make. So every email, every blog post, every picture on social media, every ad you see in a newspaper or a magazine, every billboard in the subway system in Ukraine, every commercial on TV, every YouTube video, when you go to our website, all of that stuff is I create.
So let's explore that. Let's say Koss is coming out with some new headphones. You have to
which we are.
Oh, well then perfect. Yeah. Then this is going to be totally relevant. What does that mean for you? How do you prepare for the onslaught of media?
So basically, we'll just start developing a pair of headphones, which usually will take anywhere from a year to maybe 2 years, depending on what type of product it is. And our engineers will be tuning them. We'll be getting prototypes. We'll be 3D printing stuff. And then we'll eventually get like samples from our manufacturers that are basically going to be what the end product is. Sometimes they're just shells. They don't actually have like speakers or anything in them. And then I get those and I go out and I start doing photo shoots with them. I get models and I start prepping because we need pictures for the box art. I'll do product photography for the box art. Sometimes that'll make it to the box. Sometimes that'll be a reference for a render. I'll be doing lifestyle images for the backs of the box for social media. I'll start doing videos for like how to pair a pair of Bluetooth headphones, the features, maybe just like a general lifestyle video. And I'll start creating content for this new product so that when it comes time to launch it, we have images, we have videos, we have all the box art, we have everything that we need for the launch of that product so that we can just kind of hit the asphalt running.
How long does that take to prepare all that?
There's some that I'm working on right now that I think I started maybe like a couple months ago. So I would say it probably takes a solid 2 to 3 months for me to get all of the imagery, get all the videos, and get all the content prepared, get the email ready. So I need pictures for emails. I need pictures for blog posts. I need pictures for we'll send out samples to YouTubers, and so they'll need content and stuff like that. So yeah, probably like 2 or 3 months to kind of create all of that content. And it's cool because one day here, maybe I'll be working on the website. Another day, maybe I'll be downtown Milwaukee doing a photo shoot. Maybe I'll be in Chicago doing a video shoot. Next day, maybe I'll be we just recorded an interview with a DJ here, and I had to set up all the audio and the camera and do an interview with them. And so every day is very different here. Or maybe one day I might be working on a sales presentation. And so it's really, really cool kind of weaving in and out of all these different areas rather than kind of just sticking to photography, which is basically what I did when I first started. I just did photography and video, and now I do so much more. It's really cool.
But now with the accessibility of technology, we're able to do these things quite easily.
Absolutely.
So that's very exciting.
And again, I have no college degree.
Easily.
This is all stuff that I just taught myself and learned. And so I think the biggest thing today for people that want to, not to get off track, that want to do this for a living, which I think a lot of people would love to shoot pictures or make videos for a living, is you have to know more than just, you have to do two things. You have to be good at more than just taking pictures or video. You have to be good at like the whole package. Like so many companies now outsource their blog or outsource their website or outsource their photography or outsource their commercials. And it's cheaper for them to do it in-house. It's more efficient for them to do it in-house. And more creatives like me who kind of can do a lot of that stuff and learn the things they can't. The brands and companies and organizations are creating this position out of thin air for young creatives to take. And it's really good money. And there's a lot of freedom in it. And I think we kind of hit this kind of slump where doing photography for a living kind of didn't seem like a viable, plausible career. And I think in the next year or two, we're really going to start to see an influx of brands that are just going to bring this stuff in-house and just do it in-house. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for a lot of young and old photographers and filmmakers and just all around creatives.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to love to hear that, as I know a lot of listeners, when it comes to photography, nowadays, there's a lot of education on being an entrepreneur, a lot of push of that.
Oh,
you know
God.
what I mean? And there's kind of this
hustle porn.
There's almost this pressure that like you have to do this on your own, right? And I think the idea of working for a company is almost something.
I never wanted to do this on my own.
Okay, then perfect.
I never wanted to own my own photography business. I wanted to work for a company that I respected, I enjoyed working for, and do what I love. And I'm really fortunate that I get to not only work for a local company, but a worldwide multi-million-dollar company shooting a really cool product, headphones, almost like a tech company, and get to do what I love. And I think that's just so dope.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know a lot, as I said, a lot of people listening are going to be excited about that idea, because the idea that steady paycheck oftentimes is more exciting than the potential of doing something on your own. And
doing something on your own is, I hate how, and LinkedIn does a really good job of this. I hate LinkedIn. LinkedIn does a really good job of glorifying the grind and the hustle and making it seem like it's just this really cool, dope journey. Working on your own sucks. You don't have a day off. If someone needs a photo of their dogs on Sunday at 9 a.m. and that's what they want, and you got to pay your mortgage and your car and your kids' lunches and your car insurance based off of that, because that's all you do for a living, you got to wake up at Sunday at 9 a.m. and shoot a picture of someone's dog. And so you can't turn work down because you need every single one of those jobs. You have no freedom. You're just working 24 hours a day. Honestly, photography, when you're working for yourself, is probably 20% of your business. The other 80% is the whole business side of it.
I would say it's closer to like 95.5.
Yeah, right? Yeah, paying your taxes, your website, all of your SEO and advertising, because everyone else is a photographer out there, so why are people going to choose you? Yeah, and 10% of it is actually shooting photos. Yeah. So
what would you say to those who are interested in this, right? You said that you think that here in a few years, more companies are going to bring photographers in-house. What would you say to those listening who are thinking, I might like a job like that? How do they approach that? How do they go after it? How do they go after it?
Two things. I mean, obviously, you got to be good at what you do, and you got to be providing something kind of unique. But two things. Learn more than just photography. Learn about social media. Learning how to write is a really good thing. Maybe start a blog on Medium or something like that, but learning how to write and learning how to do video. If you can write, shoot photos, and do video and kind of present that small package to a brand or a company, you're going to be way ahead of everybody else that's just doing one of those things. And the next thing is personally branding yourself. And this is going to sound stupid, and I kind of touched on this before, but everyone's a photographer. everyone's a photographer. And no matter how good you think you are, there's always someone that's better than you. There's a million people. There's kids in high school that take better pictures than me.
I say the same thing. It's totally true.
Yeah. But the one thing that you can do is to stand out and set yourself apart from all those people. And that's to personally brand yourself. And it sounds stupid, but you have to get companies and brands and people to want to hire you because you're you, and anyone else is not an option. Like, I'm getting married. Like, I want Martin Moore. I don't really care that there's other photographers and maybe they're even better and cheaper, but I don't know. I just want Martin Moore. I want Martin Moore to make this commercial. I want Martin Moore to write this blog, And so you got to brand yourself and almost think of yourself as like Nike or L'Oreal or something like that, because that is what's going to make you stand in front of everyone else trying to do the exact same thing as you. Because you put 1,000 photographers over here. How are you any different? And your pictures are not going to be enough, no matter how much you think they will be. It's just not going to be enough. It's sad. I don't like saying that, but it's just not enough. So what can you do to separate yourself from these other people? What are these other people not doing that you can do that then puts you over here by yourself? And that's personally branding yourself and taking your name and making it a selling point, a bullet point.
They are.
And then brands they'll hear about you, come across you because you've done that. And then hopefully you have a lot of things that you can offer them: do video, write their blog, do their social media, take their pictures, and so you'll be in. I see it happen all the time.
So then is that how you got your job at Koss?
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm. So
that's how I got it. And I know a lot of people that I've kind of mentored along the way that embraced that kind of thesis and they're doing the exact same things, or they're on the road to doing the exact same thing. And it's not an equation or a mantra that works for everyone. But if that's something that you want to do, those are kind of the things that work for me. That's all I know. And so that's really the only information I can offer. But I mean, there's a myriad of ways that you can get to in a position like this. But that's my story, my journey, what worked for me. And it's something I believe other people could embrace, implement, and execute and find similar success as well.
Yeah. So was it, not just to clarify here, how was it that you went about putting yourself out there? Was it, because I know that you create vlogs for around Minneapolis, right?
Yeah.
So
in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Was that what you were going for? You were hoping that by creating these, you'd get the attention of somebody else, or were you just creating them for fun and then that happened?
So my goal when I started my YouTube channel and I started vlogging was, again, I think it was 2015. I didn't have a single wedding booked or a commercial shoot, nothing. I had nothing. And I think it was like May or June of that year. I was like, well, I need to do something. And like vlogging was starting to get kind of like popular on the internet. And so I went on YouTube and I put in Milwaukee vloggers, and like literally no one popped up. And I was like, okay. At the time I was making Snapchat videos. And up until then I had made a vacation video for every trip that I had ever went on. So I had made probably 20, 30 movies for every trip that I went on. So I was used to talking. Well, I thought I was used to talking to a camera, but I was used to documenting. I kind of understood how to tell a story. And so I was like, oh, let's try making a YouTube video. And so I grabbed my camera, my phone, went downtown Milwaukee, and like I went around, started asking people what they like about the city. Everyone said beer. And I made my first YouTube video, and then I made another one. And I did that every single day for 89 days in a row until I kind of tapered off and I started doing a couple a week. But that was really the catalyst for me kind of building my personal brand and kind of growing beyond just like photography and all that. But the whole point of starting it was to have a different creative output. And also, hopefully, I yapped about my photography in my vlogs, so hoping that people would see that and then hire me to do photography. It's funny because I actually got hired to do video. Video is really what I'm known for and like people would hire me for. But the YouTube channel was kind of really to be like to pimp my photography. So it kind of backfired.
Yeah. It's funny. I use audio to talk about photography. You used video to promote your photography.
Exactly. And you don't have to use audio to pimp your photography. You don't have to use video to pimp photography. You don't have to use Medium and write, but there's a ton of tools that you can use that don't involve photography to get people to interested in you on a completely different level other than your images. Because people see your images on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you're posting them. They can't see your face. They can't hear what your voice sounds like. They don't know what you think. They don't know all those little idiosyncrasies and nuances about you as a person, as a human being, as a creative. All they see is that picture that you've posted. And so there's so much more behind that picture that people can get attached to you as a person, as a brand, as a human being. And I think audio, having a podcast or a radio show or a blog or a YouTube channel or whatever it is that you want to do is a great resource and another creative outlet to get people interested in the thing that you really enjoy, photography.
So then last question here is about this whole thing is, did you reach out to Koss about your job, or did they reach out to you based on what it was, like your vlog that you were putting out?
So they came across me and reached out to me, and they were a client of mine for about a year and a half. So they reached out to me in 2016. They had a new pair of Bluetooth headphones, and they wanted me to do a photo shoot for them and make a commercial for them. And so that was like my first really big, like, oh, wow, like this is a big deal because it was a lot of money. This is like we invented stereo headphones. So like, that's a huge deal. This is the company that invented the left and the right on every headphone that we've ever known. And so I was super excited and super nervous, and I wanted to make a really cool commercial that I hadn't seen anyone else do. And so I took it upon myself to shoot the entire commercial with photos, which was a big mistake, but it's still one of the projects I'm most proud of. But it's a video and it's a story, but the entire thing is shot with photos. It's maybe like 10 frames per second, and it's just really, really, really cool. And I think it's on my YouTube channel buried somewhere. But then they asked me to do another shoot and another shoot. And then eventually I was at the point of working on cars where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Updated my resume with all of the directors of marketing and VPs of marketing that I had worked with all these companies, and just created a whole resume that involved my photography and not cars. Asked Koss if I could use them as a reference. They said, hey, why don't you come in and meet the team? We don't really have any positions right now, but maybe we will in the future. And I'm like, okay. And then it felt like an interview. And I said, this feels like an interview. And it was an interview. And then they hired me like a couple weeks later. And that was it. But they were a client of mine in the beginning for like a year and a half. And they used to send me headphones to do giveaways and stuff. And it's funny when I look back at those old YouTube videos when I'm doing like a giveaway with Koss headphones, thinking like, you have no clue that like you're going to be working for them for a living. You have no clue. Yeah. And it was such an awesome feeling. I cried. I still think about the day when like they hired me and I put my 2 weeks in for Honda. I bawled because it was just like the culmination of a decade of hustling and failure and almost getting divorced and wondering how long, if ever, am I going to be able to do what I love for a living. And it was such a dope feeling.
Oh my God.
So never give up on yourself.
Oh my gosh. I cannot imagine what that must have felt like.
It still feels surreal today when I'm out doing a photo shoot, when I'm downtown and it's like 9:30 in the morning and, we're out shooting pictures. Sometimes I just stop and think and go, dude, you realize you're getting paid right now to like do this. And it still doesn't feel real because I worked on cars for 20 years. It feels like it's a dream that like, I still sometimes am like, God, please don't let me wake up and like be working on cars again.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is such.
But I did not get lucky. Luck had nothing to do with, there's a lot of people that say, you're so lucky that you got this job, and like luck had nothing to do with it. And I think a lot of people need to understand that luck is nothing but just opportunity in disguise. And you create your opportunity by vision and execution, and you create your own luck. And so you got to work hard. You got to have a vision, network with people, always be learning. And if there's something you want to do or you want to get, you'll make it happen.
Do it. Yeah. Oh man. I love how you shared that progression. That seemed like, I think anybody who listened to that would be able to take away and kind of implement that into their own life, right? Take that and see where they were, where it is that they want to go, and see how they can make that happen. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that. That was really powerful. Sharing that. Was really
the thing is too, is even if I didn't get this job and I was still working on cars, I'd still be making YouTube videos. I'd still be doing my photography on the side. I would still be doing all of this because it's what completes me as a human being. Yeah. And so you have to enjoy like the grind. You have to enjoy shooting. You have to enjoy working. You have to enjoy editing at night, because if all you're chasing is kind of that end game, that end goal, you'll burn out in 6 months.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So for me, I've always just loved the doing.
That's good. That feeling, it is something that is very fulfilling. And I don't think that enough people do get to feel that. They don't get to feel going after what it is that they want on their own. And I love how you found that and you went after it, and you went like hardcore, like this is what it is that I'm going to do. And you didn't let it stop you. That's very cool. That's a lot of people listening, I'm sure right now are thinking, I really wish that I could. I
almost gave up a couple times. Well,
I mean, after so many years, I mean, it would make sense to have those feelings. There's days when I feel like I could easily just go serve coffee at Starbucks right now and feel happy about it. You know what I mean? But I think deep down, and
those are natural feelings.
Right. Very cool. Thank you. When it comes to commercial photography in and of itself, lifestyle photos today, I think commercial shoot, lots of lights, studios, assistant, lots of gear. Do we need all of that just to get started? And follow up, what is, if so, or if not, what's the next logical step in upgrading our gear to getting to where we need to be?
Yeah. Do I think you need all that stuff? Not really. I mean, you should see what I do all of our like product photography on. I have just those, like a bunch of those white foam boards, which are really great for bouncing light off of. There's no reflections. So you can just get a bunch of white foam boards, put them by a window, and you can get really good product photography. Yeah, all that stuff helps, but there's a lot of hacks out there on the internet that you can do to get started. You can get some really cheap lighting kits and background kits and stuff if you want to do portraits or if you want to shoot products. And as far as upgrading your gear, for me, incremental upgrades was a big thing. I didn't just go out and blow like 10 grand on like the biggest and best camera. If you have it, cool. But as far as upgrading your gear, always try to master what you have and then move to the next thing, and then master that and move to the next thing. There's just like, if I got a Nikon D850, I mean, yeah, I'd be able to learn it pretty quick, but it would still be vastly different than this Nikon D750, you know? And so some of that equipment can just be overwhelming, and you might use it wrong. You might not use it to its full potential. You may use it as a crutch and not shoot photos as well as you would on something that was of lesser quality. And so
that's a good point.
For me, it was always incremental upgrades, but that could be a bunch of BS.
So let me ask this question. This will be my last question. We're totally at the end of our time here. You had a rather interesting journey into learning photography. You learned from YouTube. You learned from all these sources. Is there anything that you heard being taught to photographers as gospel, but now that you're like in this working position, you realize it's really not as important as it was being taught?
That's a good question. Taught as gospel. I want to say the rule of thirds, but I feel like that's probably going to be incorrect because, boy, I follow that to the T a lot of the times. But I feel like there's a lot of times where like I've disregarded that and the image ended up being like better for some reason. It's astonishing how much cropping affects your image. I feel like cropping an image is literally one of the most important aspects of the picture that you're taking. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like rule of thirds sometimes is something that's not always a thing you should follow. I know it's kind of so stupid, probably not what you're looking for, but I don't know, that might be one of them. I feel like I've abandoned that sometimes. I'm like, you know what, and you know what, I say that is because I don't follow the rule of thirds when I shoot video. So I'm a huge Terrence Malick fan. He did like Knight of Cups, Tree of Life, and he loves to push subjects like way in the corners of the image or like way to like one side of an image. He never follows the rule of thirds. Right. And so I really enjoy doing that with my video, and I do it sometimes with my photography. So that's probably why I say rule of thirds is always gospel when you're young and you're taught photography. But for me, sometimes I abandon that, and I like to, I don't know, kind of push the limits of that rule.
Yeah. And you have found sometimes that when you go off and you shoot your own thing, that you get results that you're happier with doing it your own way.
Big time. Especially in video when I do that. Like we have one on Costa's YouTube channel called, I can't remember what it's called. It's a really good example of it, but it looks just like a Terrence Malick movie. And it's literally there ain't no rule of thirds in it. It's just everybody's like over here or way over here. Yeah. And there's just there's nothing symmetrical or even or about it. There's no math in any of the composition.
I love it. That was great. You said you didn't know if it was what I was looking for, but I'm not looking for anything. I'm just curious about these things.
Yes.
I thought it's always be a great answer.
It's always fun just learning, just hearing about everyone else's different point of view for how they like to create. You know,
absolutely.
Everyone creates so differently, and that's such a blessing. That's such a cool thing that everyone has so many different ways that they use and implement to kind of get to the same point, which is telling a story through an image or video.
I don't think that we could end this any better way than that statement right there, for sure. Just go off on your own, explore, do your own thing, and figure it out.
Yes, and never tomorrow, always today.
Well, see,
that's my next tattoo. That's my next tattoo. It's going to be never tomorrow. That's actually true. I'm getting that in a couple of weeks.
Oh, that's perfect. I can't wait to see that.
You want to shoot a photo? Go and shoot it today.
Today. Oh man. Well, Martin, I want to thank you for coming on, sharing everything that you did. Before I let you go, can you let the listeners know where they can find you, your work, and keep up with you online?
If you just put Martin Moore in any social media platform, I'll be the first one that pops up. Weird flex, I know. But if for some reason Martin Moore, the UK furniture company, pops up, then put in Martin Moore Jr. and I will pop up. But I hate the Jr. But I'm at Martin Moore Jr. at everything. But if you just put in Martin Moore, I should be the first one to pop up.
See, you're working at Cost Headphones, but I would think that working at Martin Moore Furniture would have. I
always hope that they fail to make their website payments so that I can scoop up their
you can buy it. Oh man,
MartinMoore.com. I want it so bad.
I've said that often about now. I'm kind of moving away from that, but of just Hatfield Photography. My last name's Hatfield. I've always wanted to buy it, but the person who owns it is like, I don't want to say anything bad about them, but they're still very like. On it? They are. They haven't touched the website in like 2011. Yeah, like it's been forever.
I'm trying to scoop up the Twitter handle because they've squatted on that since 2012. And
see, we need. It's like I want to use it. Why can't I use it? Why can't I use it? Well, again,
2020.
Yeah, let's make this happen.
That'll be our year.
Buy these websites. Martin, again, man, thank you so much for coming on, and I really appreciate it. I know that you enjoyed today's interview with Martin Moore, and I would love to hear your biggest takeaway. Maybe a light bulb moment or something that you are going to start implementing into your photography. Now, you can share that with me by reaching out via the contact page at beginnerphotographypodcast.com. There, you can leave me a voicemail because voicemails allow me to share your thoughts or questions in your own words right here in an upcoming episode of the podcast. There's nothing to download, and of course, you can preview what you say before you hit send. So head over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com to send in your voicemail now. That is it for this week. Until next week, remember, the more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.